Hello, I'm Steph, and I'm going to talk to you about how the characters and environments affect the story of the Portal. Basically, in mainstream games, they do use the environment to its full advantage to affect the players. This is by changing it, destroying it, or evolving it into something completely new. The characters are often given a great deal of depth too, to give a bigger impact should something happen to that character, making the person who's playing feel much more involved. The stories are usually very predictable though, especially nowadays when certain things are popular in games. So it's mainly the protagonist going against the antagonist, and by doing this, the companies will still make a lot of money and they'll get noticed a lot more. They can be immersive, but they do lack the level of intelligence and comedy that some other games do include. For example, Valve, they tend to keep all their styles the same, but they do always use the environment to tell the story as much as they can. For example, in Left 4 Dead, they use long alleyways and long corridors to create tension. By doing this, you don't know what's around the corner, especially in a zombie game. That is quite frightening. They also use emotions, so if you get to know the characters more, you feel more for them. For example, Alex in Half-Life. By doing this, you become much more interlocked with her, and if something happens to her, you miss her. But also in Half-Life, you have the character Gordon Freeman. Like in Portal, he is very quiet, you never hear anything from him. He goes around the entire world alone most of the time. But unlike Portal, he actually has characters that he interacts with that aren't usually AI. We start off with our main protagonist, which is Shell. She's mute, and because of this, she can seem very stubborn. And by that, she never gives up on the test, which links her to the player, since the player will never give up on the test either. But her silence threatens the main antagonist, Glados, since she doesn't know what Shell could be planning. But we also have Shell, who basically represents us, and all the other characters in the game have to speak for us, since she can't speak, nor can we. Because we don't know if she has any family or friends, or whether, if she's hungry or anything like that, Glados will always tease her. This could be to influence the player to work harder. So she gets bullied by Glados for being alone, which is why she gets the companion cube, an inanimate object, or the cake, calling Shell fat because she's after a delicious treat, which is poison. But could it also be that Glados sees her as a daughter? But Glados is very deceiving. She is our main antagonist. And at the start of the game, with Portal 1, she's very friendly and reserved. But we're led to believe that she's harmless. But in the second game, we learned that she was once human, and she was quite involved in aperture science. So could it be that she's actually scared of dying? That's why she doesn't want Shell near her. For example, on the last test chamber, we outsmart her, and she says this all a lie, and it was all pretended that we were never going to die. The cores are also represented as voices in her head. By this, it could be that she's confused as to what she's actually feeling. As we find out about more about Carolyn, which is Glados from before she changed, we find out that it's because of this that she is actually so afraid of the transformation into Glados. And on this screenshot is just as she's being into the core transfer, which is basically her reliving her transformation, where she basically dies yet again. Because unlike Shell, she's actually scared to die, which this fear of changing into this robot who looks over aperture actually changed her into the bitter old spirit, a killer that we actually know from the first game. Then we have Wheatley. He mainly represents the voice of the character during the second game, since he is mainly the person that we have to listen to other than Glados. But he is actually very power-hungry and glory-hogging. When he actually takes over the facility, he disregards Shell and says it was all him, and that the player had done nothing for him. He is also very defensive of his intelligence, which could be, again, a link to the player, since the player starts out rather dim-witted. As we go through the lower levels, we find out about a man called Cave Johnson. As you can see in these photos, he goes from being rather young and happy, and as he starts to die from one of his inventions called conversion gel, he turns bitter and very forceful. He forces everyone in the facility who works there to actually test. But he builds Aperture Science in a salt mine, so he starts out rather wealthy until his company becomes bankrupt. So again, that's another reason why he's gone very bitter and forces everyone to test. Another character is Ratman. We never actually see him in either of the games, but we see his essence here on the walls of the Rat Room. Since he's very aloof, he is the main character who makes it unclear whether everyone else in the facility is actually alive. He might be possibly related to Shell from little hints that we actually see, since there is one quote that says, remember, the bring your daughter to work day is the perfect time to have her tested. And we do see a potato battery with Shell's name on it. But it could be that she's related to somebody else. But it might be Ratman, since Ratman looks after her like a daughter would. In the beginning, this is Test Chamber 0. The environment is rather small and clean, but it's also rather dull. There isn't much there. This might be to show that Glados has a grip onto the test subject, and that she wants to keep a tight hold so that nothing actually happens to her. By the end, this is Test Chamber 19, we see that the environments are very, very large, and they are very unsanitary, and it's very dark. In Wheatley's chambers, we see that they are Frankenstein together. This shows that he is disorganized, he hasn't finished anything off, but they are virtually unused, which could be that Wheatley is showing that he is the new ruler. We also see that there is a high contrast in all of the test chambers. This is purposely so that we can see where we can place portals and therefore complete the puzzle. It's to show the player a little hint, if anything. But why does this affect the player? Why do the environment and characters influence the story? This is because it's two of the main aspects that we actually focus on. If the environments and characters don't influence the story enough, we're not immersed, and therefore we don't play the game with quite as much emotion. The characters having no physical form and them all being AI leaves us to think that the entire facility is empty, which creates an eerie atmosphere, adding to the game's brilliance. We are left to think that the AI in charge is much more powerful, and therefore it creates more suspense and anticipation during the game. Any questions?
No. Okay. Thank you.